Welcome to the Franchisee Show, where we hear about the stories and secrets of the franchise pros. Today on the Franchisee Show, we have a splendid opportunity to hear from an amazing woman and business owner, Sharna Rowe. Sharna and her husband Brent started with their first Runway Fashion Express location in 2014 and grew to their current number of 9 locations in just the last 5 years. To add even more to the frenzy, they purchased the first unit within 3 days of being approached with the offer. That's only 3 days. Sharna's background is in engineering, so she is all about setting up systems to succeed. This is what has allowed her to stay on top of everything while she lives 5 hours away from her closest location. We'll dive into that, as well as the other necessities one has when trying to run 9 successful businesses remotely. I think you're really going to enjoy hearing from Sharna and her unique experience on the show today. Hello, I'm Jessica Elgin, and I'm here with our very own franchise pro, Dawn Pierce.
Great to be here.
Thank you, Dawn.
So what is the biggest challenge you found as you decided you wanted to move from your first location, grow the business?
Well, we're in kind of a weird spot. We were approached initially. I know a lot of franchisors kind of approach the franchise and say, I'm interested, I want to open a location. And it was a little bit the opposite with us. And so not just with our first location, but the next, 5 consecutive as well. We only sought out, I think, 3 of our 9 current locations. And so it was in one of those spots where an opportunity opened up. We had a store that was struggling, and the franchise approached us and said, hey, you guys are the closest ones to this location, and it's about 5 hours away. They are looking to sell it pretty quickly, and what do you think? And it was one of those like, whoa, what? And we had to make a decision really quickly. We kind of jumped into and bought the business sight unseen in 3 days, from the time they called us to the time that we signed all the papers. So that was our intro to multiple locations, and it was kind of crazy. So,
wow, 5 hours away. That's a pretty big distance. I think a lot of our listeners would probably relate to that and go, "Is that an opportunity I want to go and look for?" Now, in your opinion, if you had to do it again, would you want something that's closer, or do you like the fact that it's further away?
Well, all of our locations, that's actually the closest location of our 9. So we have another one that's 5 hours, and the rest are 10 to 15 hours away. So it's tricky. It's very tricky.
So
anything new?
What's really key for you in managing locations that disperse? What makes it work?
My managers. I rely on them a lot, and probably more than a lot of store owners or franchise owners, that have multiple locations, just because I have to trust them. And we have some incredible people, and so we wouldn't be able to do what we do without them.
Yeah. So how do you measure their results?
We stay in pretty constant communication because I kind of started ground level with our first location. As the first employee, I worked 75 hours a week and tried to do everything that I found that it's impossible, right? So letting people in, step by step, and saying, oh, okay, well, I can't do this aspect, but I can hire someone to do that. And so letting go a little bit, and until it was letting go of a whole store and saying, okay, you take the reins on this store, and doing that over and over again has been a little bit the key for us.
Yeah, I found that, first of all, that's the right way to do it. But then you always have to have a few things that you keep as touchstones. So even though you're not there, the business is accomplishing what you want.
Right.
How did you figure what those would be for you?
Well, so my background, I'm an engineer. So I think it's a huge strength for me. I organize and, set up processes and systems, almost second nature. And so for me saying, oh, okay, I understand the responsibilities of your job. Let's check in once a week, once a month, once a year, and say, where are we at? When I do store visits, I have my list of things that I check on. and just say, oh, okay, here's where we are now. Maybe let's refocus a little bit and start heading in this direction. And then come out again and check, okay, are we on that right track, right? That's what I'm always looking for. Are we in the right direction? Not necessarily, are we as far along the path as we would like? Probably not.
Yeah.
But if we're going in the right direction, we're a lot further than, I don't know, along.
Yeah.
That is great. Well, and I know that when you're working with managers, I think most of us can relate to the fact that hiring the right person is very difficult. And then finding out the markers that work for them, because it may be different for every manager as well. When you've been hiring, in your experience, what is the key to successfully finding a good manager?
Oh, this is so hard. So in our business, we buy and sell new and gently used clothes. So it's pretty crucial we find someone that is able to stock our store with the right stuff. And so it's hard to find that kind of a person, but also a person that's responsible enough to manage a team, run the store off-site, right? Like I'm not there to kind of hold their hand.
Right.
So typically we're looking for like a mid-20s to 30-year-old with a lot of management experience. And a lot of those people don't exist. So like you're saying, some people, we have each of our managers have their own strengths. And just trying to decide, okay, well, if this person needs to work on the buying aspect, what is it we can do to help them? If this person needs to work on the management aspect, how can I help them? And I'm still learning that. I don't know.
Right? That's something we always learn. Well, Dawn, you have quite a bit of experience in this arena. What advice can you give both Sharna and the listeners in developing that skill?
Well, first of all, I'll echo what you say. I mean, it's a very hard thing to do, but it is critical, is finding the right store manager. If that's not right, I don't care what else the system is, it's not going to work, right?
Right.
The big key, I think, is as you continue to grow, how do you pass on that knowledge? Because the point's going to come pretty quick where you can't manage all of your store managers. How do you figure out how to get somebody between you and the store managers to know the skills you've got? And I would think that would be your next challenge. As you look forward, you have 9 now. My guess is you want to have quite a few more.
We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're like, well, it's kind of like children. At what point do you stop?
That's exactly, yes.
Yeah. But if you were to want to move,
Mm-hmm.
how do I set up my organization for my next level of growth so I personally don't get run ragged in it? And to me, have you thought about that challenge yet?
Absolutely. That's my number one focus right now, honestly. So of our 9 stores, we also have another manager, and she's my right-hand girl, does all of our ordering. And she used to be the manager of one of our locations and moved away. We don't have a location where she lives now. And so I said, how do we keep her? So she works from home and does a bunch for me. And then I'm hoping to transition one of our managers now that I feel can take that leadership role. She loves training. She, has that mindset where, okay, this is a team focus. I'm not just here on an island by myself running my store. And so I think it's crucial for us to look within for someone like that, just because we have such a unique business.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and that's true of almost every business. If you can find the right people inside and bring them up, start to see that as a career, every other manager will see that as an opportunity, and it'll build strength into the business.
I think that also develops a little bit of a culture too.
You bet.
Of finding and appreciating what you have. So I think that's a great concept. Very good.
Yeah, you've grown, I look, and you've grown very quickly and been very successful. Let me turn the corner a little bit. What didn't go as planned? And what did you do about it when you found it? You don't want to admit this, right?
I know. Well, let's see. So I said,
this is the secrets part.
Right. Yes. So we picked up 4 of our 9 locations. Let's see. We're failing businesses. I mean, the previous owner sold the business because it either wasn't profitable or wasn't worth their time anymore. And so each store had its own challenges. Our first one that we bought in 3 hours, a lot of it was like a training issue. I didn't have the tools to help train them from 5 hours away. And so, after that, okay, let's build some training tools, write an employee handbook first off.
Yeah.
And so another one, the previous owner our franchise is fairly fluid in a sense where the owners have a lot of control over the business. And so some of the owners, I guess, especially previous owners, have a different perspective of how the business should run. And so they changed some of our core business practices. One of them for us was, we're not going to pay cash for clothes. We're just going to pay in-store credit. And so when you change that dynamic of the business, it affects almost everything. People want to cash, so they stop bringing things in. Your cash flow for the business decreases quite a bit. And so you have to raise your prices. And now you have an inflation in your store and you can't pay your bills. And so there's all these things, not to mention you're training all your customers a certain way, and having to retrain customers is one of the most difficult things that we've run into.
Yeah. That's a real challenge because it's a balance. The store manager is a great source of new ideas for you, but at the same time, there's some leverageable ideas that you've already found out, mistakes you've already made, and you don't want them to do it. How do you balance that?
Well, luckily, a lot of the mistakes were others that we absorbed, and so we kind of had that perspective and saying, oh, wow, their business obviously didn't work. What is it about that business that didn't work? And learning from that and taking it on in the next store. So I feel like we've had the advantage of it wasn't our fault in a sense, or at least that we have the right information and saying, okay, I've run a store. I know what it's like when you say this, this, and this. And, my husband's the business guy and knows the numbers, right? So he's pretty crucial to that whole process and saying, well, you can't be successful in a business without these key points. Cash flow is one of them. So.
So if cash flow is one of them, what do you think are some of the other critical points?
In our business, one thing we found is inventory, and making sure we have enough stuff for people to purchase. Our management has been another. We've kind of cycled through and saying, okay, let's get someone with a lot of experience and, in management, how does that work for us? Well, now we're not getting the right inventory in here. Let's find somebody with a lot of really good buying experience. They do know what to stock the store with, and they're the only ones working. Now they need 4 more people on their team, and they're working 80 hours a week to fill that time. And it overstresses them, and so trying to find that balance for each store and each manager, each person is a little different in the way that they run things and what they can take on. So it's been, it's been crazy, and it's never going to change, which is what I love.
Right? It's kind of fun. So speaking of change though, and it sounds like balance tends to be the core of everything that you've discovered in your business, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, how do you balance the digital age? Because there is, you look at Facebook or there's all these online yard sales and things like that. How do you compete with that? And how do you balance that with an actual store front and physical location?
Yeah, this is scary because in the retail world, stores are closing almost daily.
Yeah.
And so, it's exciting to me because we have such a different aspect of our business. You can sell your clothes online. You can send them in, there's online shops just like us. But most of them can't give you money that same day. And so we have the advantage of saying you can come in today and probably get money in under an hour, almost always. And some of our locations, are busier. So maybe it's 2 hours. But it's the same day. We can always give you money that same day. That's and awesome. I think that is a huge selling point for our business to stay relevant.
Right. Yeah, everybody's got to have that unique proposition that makes you different. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's part of what the brand really stands for you. Yeah. Well, you've been very successful. If someone were to come to you and say, mentor me, what would you tell them if they have their own business and want to grow it? What are the things they should think about? What have you learned?
Trust people, but I guess only so much. I feel like
Love
I
that.
have to,
Trust
I
but
have to give
verify, right?
Yes, exactly. I have to give everything. And we've had some managers that have abused that trust, and have left. It's been really hard, to tell you the truth. And so that was a learning experience, but
Right.
I'll never change the way that I do that, because I have to trust them. And if I can't, then that's when I step in and say, oh, okay, well, what is it we need to do? Let me draw the line then. And until that day, I have to give 100%. And I'm always going to do that.
Yeah.
Did that
That's
answer?
awesome.
No,
That does.
yeah, and that's really key. I mean, that's the key to delegation, right? And if you want to grow a chain or grow multiple locations, you have to learn how to delegate. So yes, you have to trust. You don't need to go, as we said, we need to select the right person to be in there.
Yeah.
And again, to me, that's where I've always failed the most. I didn't take the time up front and get the right person in, because if they can't do it, they can't do it. And you should find that out. But then, how do you give them some runway? How to do it? But then how do you not lose control? What touch points do you have? I mean, that's got to be important for anybody that wants to do multiple locations.
Absolutely. Another thing that came to mind when you were talking about that, I think many of our listeners have probably experienced the same thing, where they do lose trust in a key employee, somebody that they is critical. How do you overcome that? How do you keep that from bringing you down and stopping the progress that you've already got in play?
Right. Well, there's always somebody that's willing to step up. And if there's not, then maybe they're not willing to see that for themselves. But honestly, it's hard because I'm not there, but most of the time in this situation, I end up going to the store, right? And I end up face to face. And sometimes it's the 16-year-old that's in high school that steps up, takes the role. And we've had assistant managers that are 16. And obviously that's not somebody we can hire as a manager, but we can lean into them and say, like, let's give them some experience. Let's let them, because they're not going to get that chance anywhere else. And it's pretty incredible. So,
and that goes back to the trust.
Yes.
You've just got to continue to trust people. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, as we get towards the end of this, tell me, as you're looking forward, what is the one thing that you're looking to change or improve in your business that'll take you from 9 locations to as many as you'd like to have?
Well, one thing I'm working on now is more processes. I'm always a process person, but I think, this is hard, because there's so many things that we can start improving right now, Yeah. And so, I don't know.
I shouldn't have asked such a tough question.
Right at the end too.
I know, right?
but that is key. I mean, as you say, there's always so many opportunities for things you'd like to do to improve the business. But as the leader, you've got to get the focus, right? And what are the 1 or 2 things that'll have the most payoff for us? Where should we spend our time? It's an important lesson. It's a tough thing to do.
It is.
So, well, I've enjoyed spending the time with you today. It's great talking to people who have a unique idea, take a very small business and grow it to be relatively large, relatively quick. I mean, good for you. Good success.
Absolutely. Sharna, thank you so much. It's been great. And I think the listeners can all relate to the situation you're in. A lot of them are looking to do what you've already done. So you've had some great success. 9 locations is phenomenal in a fairly short amount of time. We appreciate your insights on the keys to moving forward and getting that developed and getting initiated, including the employees, including the inventory, the cash flow, some of the stuff that we'd like to put on the back burner. So we really appreciate that. And for the listeners out there, if you're interested in this topic and others, please listen to some of our other episodes as well. And we will see you next time here on the Franchisee Show. Thank you for joining us today. For more episodes, go to thefranchiseeshow.com.